So we are at the bottom of Daf Ayin Amud Beis. We're up to Bulshus. We actually learned the Mishnah already yesterday, but we're going to chazer the Mishnah over so that we're prepared for the Gemara. Ayin Amud Beis. Bulshus with a samach, with a suf, not with a tuf. Just to make it clear. Bulshus, shenichnas la'ir. Rasha Bulshus is a chayil. They're an army. Al Shem Shemechapshin v'choisrin. They dig and they seek. They want to uncover everything that they can seize to eat, to pillage. Karilu Bulshus. They're called the Bulshus.
Article says Baleshes.
Baleshes. Okay, that's how can it be Baleshes if it's Beis Vav Lamed?
Well,
Oh, boy, Leshes. Yeah. My pronunciation is so much more exciting.
Right.
Okay. Elu ve'elu mutaros. I'm sorry. B'shas shenichzalir b'shas shalom. If it's a peaceful time where they have the time to be able to pillage and rob and destroy everything in their path, then chaviyos psuchos asuros and sesumos mutaros. Open barrels are usher because they for sure obviously opened them and tampered with them. But sesumos, if they're sealed, they'll be mutar. But b'shas milchama, when they don't have time to pillage and steal, they're busy running and fighting. Then elu ve'elu mutar and levisha ein penai lenasik. Now this is a very real thing. I think I said over once on Shabbos. My grandmother said that when the Russians came to liberate Romania, so the city that my grandparents lived in actually had never been overrun yet by the Germans. The Russians, when they came, they would make a line, maybe like 5 miles wide of soldiers. They literally walked and destroyed everything in their path, like locusts. They just walked through everything. So when they came into her village in Romania, most people there had wine cellars of wine they made themselves. So there was barrels of very strong wine. And they were such chayas that they wanted to get drunk and drink. So the normal way to do it is you go to the spigot and you open up the spigot and you fill yourself some wine. They were so filled, they just shot holes in the barrels. They put their mouth to drink the wine. But what happened was you're in a very tightly concealed cellar and the aroma of the wine, the vapors of the wine are very strong and it knocked them out. And they passed out, and hundreds and hundreds of Russian soldiers drowned in people's cellars in 3 inches of wine. So it's very real. Strike the Gemara. Uramini. How could you say that when someone's in the middle of a war and he's busy and he's stressed, that he's not going to have time to create Isser? Uramini. Irsha Kapshua Karkum, a city that Karko means Motzar. They were laid siege against them, and then they were taken over. If you live in such a city, Kol Kahanoi Shebesoicha Psulis. Any Kahanas, meaning any woman who's married to a Kohen in that city, will be possible because the assumption is that they were violated. And an Ashes Kohen, even Shenenza, is also to her husband. And Ashes Israel Shenenza is mutter. So all of the wives of the Kohanim are considered usher to their husbands, which means the assumption is that they're violated. If they're busy in the middle of a war, how are they going to, if they're not going to have time to play with a little bit of wine, how are they going to have time to have activities? Omer of Mari, no, you don't understand. L'nasach ein pnai. To usher wine, they don't have time. Livo yesh pnai. Not because it takes less time, because for what's important, the talk of Lahu Yitzrayu. For Znus, they have such a taiva that for that they make time. That's important. But wine, yeah, they like to press wine, but that they're able to control themselves when they're under stress. But Znus, that they'll do no matter what, and that's why, even though under these circumstances they wouldn't asher wine, they do asher the woman. If you think about it, we're learning Lomdus, but when you think about it from a humanistic point, it's very tragic. People are living in a city peacefully, not bothering anybody, and these marauders come in, and now these women, their lives are shattered. Our families get shattered because there could be like 50 people in the city that suddenly have to get divorced. Like, it's not just a dry litvish halacha. It's mamish trend, and vice versa. These things went on all the years. During the Crusades too. Besides the women they killed, who knows how many women they asked to their husbands. Right? There's even a shaila in the Nodi Yehuda, a horrible shaila. where there was a group of Jews traveling, and they were attacked and captured by Goyim. And one of the women, who was a married woman, of course, she seduced the captor, and she got him through seducing him to let him free. And there was a huge machloikus in the early Achronim. What's the deal? Where she asur l'bayla or not? Because she was nensa to do what she did, but the act itself wasn't oinus. So the question is that called an oinus or not? There was a big machlokes. So there was one shita who held that that's not called an oinus, and she's muteris l'bayla. There was another shita who held what she did was a mitzvah, a big mitzvah, but she's asur l'bayla, similar to Yehudis and similar to Esther b'chasher avadti avadti. I have to do it, but I realize I'm becoming asur l'bayla. And then there was a shita who held that it was an avla that she even did it. So there's a big discussion. Rahman l'tzlan to us it's just chalom. There's a discussion. This is very real in their lives. Rahman l'tzlan.
In this case, the soldiers come in. If a woman says, "I definitely was not violated," she would not be believed.
I don't know. The Gemara discusses that. The Gemara says a woman who was captured, we automatically assume she was. Right. She was, but there were exceptions to it. We had in the Gemara. I mean, we learned this in Nashim. I don't remember off the top of my head. We have to wait till we come back around again. But yeah, there's a discussion. If a woman claims she wasn't violent, could she be believed? Zok the Gemara. Ha'omnin shel Yisrael sheshalach lahem oivit gechavim chav shel yain nesach b'schar. A Jew worked for a guy and he's owed $700 of pay. Really, he should get either a check or cash. What did the guy send him? A jug of wine worth $700. That's it or no. So he could reject payment. Muter loy meloy, no. Tain lanu es tameh. I don't want the wine. Give me cash. If he never accepted the wine, then he never had Isur Ano in his possession, and there's no problem of swapping in Isur Ano for something else because he never had Isur Ano. All he had was a chiyuv that the guy had to pay him for his work, and the guy hadn't discharged that chiyuv. But Mishanichnas ala Rishusa. What if the Yid had already accepted the Yain Nesach, and now he tells the guy, "Hey, you know what? Could we swap it out for cash?" Also, because now he's swapping out his Yain Nesach, which is Asur Bano, the cash you're not allowed to do that. So, well, as long as he didn't accept it, so then he hasn't taken possession. I mean, I guess if he doesn't want to be koinit, he's not koinit. So this is where the people ask, what if someone gifts you trade for bronfen? So what's the law? Are you allowed to trade it in? So once it's in your rishus, now it's not as chomer as this, because that nowadays it's not yain nesach. It's a worse tam yain, right? We were talking about mamish yain nesach, and we had the very big kula of Rashi that nowadays anyway there's no such thing as real yain nesach because nobody really believes in Avoda Zara. It's ma'asav v'seim b'yadeim, but I don't know what halach is. I know certain rabbanim do allow you to swap it in. Certain rabbanim say you got to spill it out. I don't have such a problem because I'm not getting gifts. But there are people who get a lot of gifts from them.
One thing, wine against
you're allowed to tell a goy that I owe $1,000 in taxes. Do me a favor, save a face a lie. Do me a favor, pay my taxes for me, and I'll already pay you back. Save a havas a lie, monas hamel, and then I can pay him back. Now, even if the goy ends up giving yayin nesach to the malchus, and Rashi is more specific. Rashi learns that there was an income tax, and the income tax was to give a percentage of the assets that you had. So if you raised animals, you'd have to give, let's say, 10% of your animals. And if you grew grain, you'd give 10% of the grain. Or if you made wine, you would give 10% of the wine. So the Yid was supposed to give wine. He asked the guy, do me a favor, take care of my taxes for me. And then the guy gave him wine, yayin nesach. So the Yid could pay back now the guy, and it's not considered like he's buying yayin nesach. Why? Zot Rashi, because technically the guy could have told the CRA, I'm going to give you $1,000 check. They would have accepted it. That he gave wine was his own thing. I didn't ask him to give wine. Right? I asked him to lay out the money for him. So Mamela, it's not called that. It doesn't even look like I'm paying for yayin nesach.
Unless you give the instruction to the guy, let's say we both wine, but give him some of your wine.
If I say specifically, that would probably be a problem. The Gemara has another case that would be a problem. Go in my place, take my place to deal with the tax man. That would be a problem. But the problem is, what's this different than Save HaFeisalai? Amalei Rav, oil tachti loitza comment. That's different. You're telling him, be in my place. Whatever you do bishlichusi. That's a problem. Our case is not like that. You could tell the guy, save me, protect me from the CRA, and there you're not making him in your place. He's a third-party agent that's dealing with them for you. Therefore, you could pay him back, even though he gave them Yaines. Now, I can't imagine that this is a real shlichus and it's mamish asher deraisa. I think these are all the rabbanans. You shouldn't tell a guy to do this for you, to oil tachti, because it almost looks like he's being your shliach. I can't believe it means that he's mamish a shliach. Now we're getting into a sugya of Metzia, probably, of kinyonim. What constitutes a kinyon? And this is very, very relevant. Rashi, Tosfos discusses a place where it's very relevant of what constitutes a kinyon for a goy. In our sugya, it's relevant. Lagabe, who owns the yain that became yain nesach? Does the yid own it or does the goy own it? So the Mishnah says as follows. Now we know that there is a pasuk that says v'chesimkar memkar lamisecha, and we learn either lamisecha b'mishicha ulanochi b'kesef or prunk v'keret lamisecha b'kesef and legoy b'mishicha. So there's a shaila which way we learn that. There's a shaila which way we learn that. That's number one. There's also Shita Tosfos says that lamisecha b'mishicha for a goy it could be either way. So there's a shaila of how of what kinyan applies to. So what does the Mishnah say? You have a Jewish merchant and he is selling his wine to a goy. We need to be concerned that the goy shouldn't touch the wine and aser the wine before the goy owns the wine. Because if the goy touches the wine and asers the wine while the yid owns the wine, now the yid can't sell it anymore and accept payment for it. So pasuk at shaloi moda. They made up the price. It's going to be $5 a gallon before they measured it. Now the way they measured it is what they would do is the yid would pour it from his big jug into a keli, and that keli, whether it's the goy's keli, the yid's keli, now we're assuming it's the yid's keli. The goy takes that keli and he makes a meshicha on the keli. Now the question is his. So it says pasuk achalima that if they had already made up the price and then they measured and then the goy made a meshicha, so therefore dam of mutarin, because it's the goy. Now if the goy touches the wine after that point, it doesn't matter because the goy asked for his own wine. But the wine that was sold through the kinyan meshicha transferred while it was still kosher wine, and therefore dam of mutar. So clearly from this Mishnah, it seems like our Mishnah holds that a goy is kind of a meshicha. That's going to be challenged. Modad achaloi pasak. What if they made the kinyan meshicha, but they never made up the price? Then dam of asurim, because then the meshicha will not be kind of, because they didn't make up the price, and therefore the kinyan is going to be completed upon payment, but by that time the goy touched the wine. Zok Gemara weiter. Amar meimar meshicha by v'kachavim koina. Meshicha is koina by a goy. Teda, the Hani Parsoi, these Persians, Mishadri Pardashni Lahadodi, they send gifts to each other. The article touches it as bribes to the government. And they don't go back on their word. So clearly it's recognized, the Mashiach is recognized as a king. So Zok Tosfos, but because they recognize it, that means halachically it's considered a kinyan. So if you look at the Tosfos that transitions from the skinny lines to the wide lines, there can't be the raya and the reason because they do it. The reason why a Meimer holds a Mashiach is koinen by a goy because he learns the sugya like Rabbi Yochanan. Damer mois koinos. Mois is koinos for a yid. V'dorish lamisecha bekasef, but la'ovid kechavim b'mashicha k'da'amar b'b'chayris. I frektizers and masha maybe raya mi pardashi de persoi. Ein zakim amas labam. It's just an anecdotal example. Sheminig is saying mina persiim she'enim chayjin achar mashicha shema mina shekachadin. So that would, I guess, since that's the way it's been for years, it's probably because the Bnei Noach always use Mashiach, that's their king. Right? Now there's another problem over here. There's another problem that we have to know. Let's look at the next Tosfos, but not at the beginning of the Tosfos, at the end of the Tosfos. Or actually, let's learn the whole time. Pardashni is doiroinos. That's how Rashi touches it. It's a present for the Hadrabu. Almo Yisiv Amir that kanina b'mashiach. Right? Lishna achmina zaktoisus michuvas hagoyim mi sheyesh like kur chitim. And if I look in the Lamed, kach pirsh b'kuntris zeikir. Now there's another lesson in Rashi. I don't know where this Rashi is, but I don't see it in Rashi here. The lishna zeikir, the lishna kama koni b'matana. In the first lashon, it's b'matana. He's koine. We're trying to prove over here. Amemar is trying to prove over here that Mashiach is kind of a mekach memkar, but Pardashni is only a matana. Even if the old Mashiach is not koina for mekach memkar, if there is money that changes hands, that's when we say the Mashiach is not koina. Where there's no money changing hands, the like a kaspa. So the shaila is only in a sale would the Mashiach seal the deal and be mechayiv the lakeach to pay, or there has to be a payment made as well. Okay, so that's why the Pardashni isn't really much of a raya if it was Dairoinos, because there for sure there wouldn't be a kesef. Okay, so let me know when you're good to go. So that was a Meimer. A Meimer holds a Mashiach is koina by goy. Rav Ashi Yomer Loilam Eimelach Mashiach by B'chabul. Eina koina. You see that they do honor Mashiach. By Lahajabu the Ramos Rucha Hudin the Kitelu. It's like their pride. I want to make Mashiach. I don't back out on my word. But not that the etzim it's koina. So that is the discussion: is Mashiach koina by a goy or not? And that doesn't make a difference if it's a goy to a goy or if it's a yid to a goy or a goy to a yid. Either way, if there's a transaction that a goy is involved with. There's a machlokes if Mashiach is koina or kin kesem. Amar Rashi midah b'inlah. I'm going to prove to you that Mashiach is not koina. Midah amalu Rav lanis of Yosy. Rav was giving advice. It's a little complex. You have to help up. Rav was giving advice to wine merchants, and he was telling them when you sell wine to a guy, you have to make sure that you're paid before the guy takes possession of the wine and has an opportunity to answer it. Because if he answers it while it's still yours, you're not going to be able to accept payment. So therefore, he told them this is how you should do it. When you're pouring wine for the goy, make sure shaklu zuzi minayu first get paid, so the kinyan is made before anybody touches any wine. Then and then you can start pouring it in for them. What if they came without money? Don't tell them on credit. No, because then the kinyan is not going to be chal, and when they ask for the wine, it'll be your wine. So how do you get around it? Pull cash out of your pocket and lend them the money. So you got to pay me. I'll lend you the money. We can have a separate loan that you owe me, nothing to do with the wine. But you're going to pay me before I give you the wine. So then they owe you money under a separate issue, and they'll be able to pay you back. But the wine, they're paying you and they're being koine before they touch it.
So he gives you the guy gives the money. The money is kind. Does that mean it's
so now it's the guy's wine? So now whatever happens, it doesn't matter anymore.
so even though it's his wine before you even give it to him?
If you hold kesef koine, yeah.
But that's before you even pour it.
That's right. That's right. It is before you pour it.
So you have guy's wine in your wine.
It's kosher wine. It's kosher wine that belongs to a guy. That's not a problem. Right? We had many cases where the guy owns warehouses of kosher wine. Right? And the Jews control it. Right? We had the more discussion. The Eloi of Disuhachi, if you're not going to do this akrav, you might run into a problem. Because Kika Hava Yain Nesech Rishusaichu Kava. If you don't take the money first, and Vivalt Kesef is Koina, Mashiach is not Koina, therefore it's very possible that you're going to have yayin nesach in your rishus. But if you take the money first, then you're guaranteed that the sale went through before they came close to the wine.
That's it, because it may make a machine before.
If he makes a mashiach, it's good. If he makes a mashiach,
So what's the case that it's gonna be a problem?
the case will be a problem if they don't pay me first. If I give you the wine and you make a mashiach, but you didn't pay yet, the sale is not completed. And if they touch it after they made the mashiach, or even before, they're ushering your wine. But the fact that they make the mashiach doesn't help. The only thing that helps to protect you is if you're paid in advance. So that proves that there's no other kinyan, because if you could make the kinyan through mashiach, so then he could have tell him to make the mashiach first and then touch the wine. But he didn't say that. He said the only answer for you is if he pays you first. So that seems to indicate that the only way to make the kinyan is by paying. And once the kinyan is made, you don't have to worry. And that's exactly what Rav Ashi says. If you hold that mashiach by an ovid, I don't know if I read the one before. And then once it's yayin nesach in your shus, now he's paying you for yayin nesach. And that would be awesome. If Rav would hold that mashiach is kaina, why do I have to take money first? Just make a kinyan mashiach first, which is what you were driving at. So so midamashcha ovid kachavim kanya. Let the guy be koined by Mashiach, just like our Mishnah seems to indicate, right? And yain nesach lehava ad nogabe, until the guy will touch it after the Mashiach, which is exactly what our Mishnah seems to say. Zok to Gemara, Elamai must be the Rav holds the Mashiach is not clean. Zok to that's not true. Idik achayil v'rami lemonadi Yisrael. If the Yid was pouring wine into the keli of a Jew, Rav wouldn't have been concerned, because the guy will make Mashiach on the keli of the Jew, and the guy would have been kind of the wine before he had a chance to touch it, and therefore the Yid can accept payment. That wasn't what Rav was worried about, because you're right, Mashiach could be kind. In other words, I'm disagreeing with you. You don't have a right for me, Mashiach is not kind. Mashiach would be kind. And in fact, if the guy made a Mashiach before he touched the wine, there would be no problem. But you know what Rav was worried about? Lo tzricha when the Yid measured the wine and poured the wine into the bucket to measure it out, it was the guy's keli that he was using. What's the problem with the guy's keli? Still the guy's not touching it. The guy's keli is a different problem. There's some residual wine sitting at the bottom of this jug that he's measuring into. So as soon as my kosher wine touches your yain nesach, now it's mixed in. So now it all becomes us. So Zok Gemara, we're concerned, Rav was concerned, if you're pouring it into the keli of the goy, it's going to become osir, and therefore, and there would be no mashiach made, there would be no kinyan made at all, and it became osir, and now you cannot accept payment. But really, mashiach is kind of, right? Zok Gemara, what are you talking about? Soif kimota lavir the mana kanya. When a guy is holding his keli, and the yid's pouring wine into the keli, the moment the wine gets in the airspace of the keli below the top of the walls, but not yet touching the bottom, at that point, the guy will be koinit b'hagbah, because he's holding a keli, and the wine is in this keli that he's holding. So at that split second, he's koinit. When does it become osir? When it hits the bottom and touches the wine at the bottom. The guy's keli. Yeah. So the guy's holding the keli in his hand. The yid pours wine into it. Now the guy is koinit b'hagbah before it hits the bottom, and then a nanosecond later, after the guy was koinit, it hits the bottom. So therefore, it will still not be a problem. It will still not be a problem. So basically, the problem is, what was Rav worried about? There is no concern over here. There's no concern over here, because if he made Mashiach would be kaina, and if it was into the goy's keli would be kaina. So what was Rav worried about? Elamai, it must be that Rav holds Mashiach is not kaina, and the problem is a case of Mashiach, and until he gets paid, the wine belongs to the Yid. Good? Okay. Zot Gemara, Shema Mina Nitzuk Chipur. You're going to have to say Nitzuk Chipur, because let's think about this for a second. the wine is coming down in a stream. It's going into the barrel of the goy, right? Now it's not becoming usher, right? We said it didn't become usher. We say the goy is cutting before it hits the bottom. So if the goy is cutting before it hits the bottom, what's Rav worried about? Right? El Mayavarayat Mashiach is not going to. Dr. Gemara, you know what we're worried about? What we're worried about is when the first part of the stream hits the bottom, it's going to usher all the wine, even the wine that's not even in the barrel yet. Because it's nitzuk, it's one big stream. So, Oibezoi, in order for you to deflect my raya and say that you don't have a raya from Rav, that Mashiach is not kaina, so then what's Rav worried about? Rav must be worried about a case where the yid's pouring it into the keli of the goy, and when he pours the wine in, the moment it hits the bottom, the beginning of a stream hits the bottom of the barrel, it ushers the whole stream, say what's in the goy's barrel and say what's out of the goy's barrel, which still belongs to the yid. So now the yid can't accept payment for it. So the only way for you to deflect my raya that Rav holds Mashiach's koina is if you hold that he was concerned about this isser. But if he's concerned about this isser, then you have a proof that needs a chibur, and that's a big shaila. It's a big shaila if needs a chibur or not. And the only way you're going to get out of saying that you have a raya from Rav that Mashiach is not koina is by saying that he also needs a chibur. That's not what Rav's concern is. Because if, as we just said, that the goy is holding the keli, and when the wine gets into the airspace of his keli, his koine b'hakba, yet there'll still be a problem because the wine, when it hits the bottom, is going to answer even the stuff that's out of the barrel. Hachanami loitzrich. Eina chanami. I still don't need Rav's concern. That wasn't Rav's concern because as with nitzuk is eina chibur, and as the wine comes into the goyish keli, it's in the aver, it's nikna to the goy, and after it nicks to the goy, then it hits the bottom. And nitzuk eina chibur, so the stuff above will not become usher, right? So then we're back to square one. If Meshicha is koina and nitzuk eina chibur, so what was Rav worried about? What was Rav worried about? I'll tell you what Rav was worried about. The goy was not holding the keli, so Hagbah is now off the table. The monach ha'ara, the goy's keli is sitting on the floor, so therefore the goy's not koinit. The goy's not koinit. So the wine from the Jew goes into the barrel of the goy, and it becomes osir, and it all still belongs to the yid. So they all still belong to the yid. Rav to be careful about that. Make sure to get paid before you pour. So now you don't have a raya from Rav that Mashiach is in a koina, because Rav is speaking about a specific case where the yid would pour the wine right into the jug of the goy. And that's where you'd have a problem, because there's no kinyan here. Frank, what do you mean? It's in the kalim of the goy. Don't the kalim of the goy act like his chotzer and will be koina for him? V'tiknalei kalim. So if his kalim are koina for him, weiter it becomes the goy's wine before it hits the bottom of the kalim. Elamai, you'd have to say, shemamida kalav shalakech b'shush moicher loikana. So in order to deflect my raya, you're going to be forced to say that the kalim of the lekech b'shush moicher are not koina, loikana lekech. And therefore, the wine remains in the rishus of the yid, and it becomes usher in the rishus of the yid. And that's what Rav was worried about. And that's a very big shaila. That's a very big shaila in the Bavis, in Rash and Kedushin, in Bav Metzia, and Bav Vakra. It's a very big shaila if Kalev Shalokech Rishus Meicher is kaina. And you're going to be forced to say that Rav holds like kaina. And we don't know if that's true. So we're back to square one. Either you have a raya that Mashiach is not kaina, or you have a raya that Kalev Shalokech Rishus Meicher is not kaina, or you have a raya that Nitzach Chibur. And you don't want to oblige Rav to any one of these three positions, so then why is Rav warning the merchants not to pour wine till they get paid? Let's say that Caleb Shalakech B'Shus Moicher is Koine Lekech, and therefore there's no makam to answer. So then what's Rav worried about? You know, the way the wine worked was at the top of the jug that the guy brought, there was some type of rim. And the wine would first drip into the rim, and then it would go into the keli. And because of that, when it was in the rim, the guy's not koine it. The guy's only koine it if it's in the keli itself. But the problem is there's some droplets of yayin nesach in the rim. So Rav was worried that if the guy comes with such a keli, I guess it was the derech to come with those kelim in those days, and you pour your kosher wine into his jug, and it goes into the rim first, that wine is still yours, it will become also else because it's mixed in with yayin nesach, and you're not kind. The guy's not kind until it gets into your jug, and therefore the kama insufle. So that was Rav's concern. So Rav can hold nitzuk any chibur, and Rav can hold kelev shalakech b'shus moicher koinu lakech, and Rav can hold mishiches any koina. But the problem here is if he poured it into the kelim of the goy and it goes to the rim, because I guess it would go to the rim and then drip into the keli, there for sure the lakeach is not koinit, and it became also from the wine in the rim. Now you should remember we had. If a guy sticks his hand and shakes around and he's wine, that's yayin nesach, but there's no hope for it. Yeah. But what if a guy, I have a nice barrel of 60 gallons of wine, and the guy dumps in a gallon of his wine? So what's the halacha there? So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel held that I could sell, or let's say he puts in 2 gallons of wine. I could sell this whole barrel of wine to a guy, I'm allowed to have enough from it, chutz midmei yayin nesach shabbat. So if now there's 62 gallons and 2 of Isser, I can sell it to a guy as 60 gallons. But that's what there was a cool of Reb Shimon Gamliel. That if it's Yayin Nesach Mamish, you can't. But if it's Taruvas of Yayin Nesach, then you could sell what's not Osir for its value. Right? So Zog to Gemara, why would have Rav been worried about anything? At worst, the whole problem was Taruvas Yayin Nesach. If it was Taruvas Yayin Nesach, I could still charge the guy for my wine. So what was Rav worried about?
Less the rim.
But I'm not charging for the rim anyway. I'm only charging from what I'm selling him. That's his. Oh, right. So there was no problem of taking full charge. So Frek the Gemara, Uchaman the loik Reb Shimon Gamliel. This obviously will not work with Reb Shimon Gamliel. Do you Reb Shimon Gamliel? Ha'amar yimach hakul of the chum chutz with the yain jesher zavoy. So now you have to say Rav disagrees with Reb Shimon Gamliel, and Rav holds that no, once wine yain nitzach gets mixed into my wine, that whole wine is also bought and I can't sell it. Zok the Gemara, that's exactly true as a matter of fact. We're discussing Rav Shita, right? Rav is the one who was advising these merchants to take money first. Well, guess what? Only by chavis b'chavis avalo yain b'yain. Where does Rav agree with Reb Shimon ben Gamliel? If I have a whole warehouse full of bottles of wine, and a guy brings one of his bottles in and puts it in there, now I don't know which bottle this is. There, I'm allowed to sell all the bottles, but I only charge for my bottles. But if his wine actually got mixed into my container, and there's wine mixed in, there Rav disagrees with Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. And Vibalti disagrees with Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. He was telling the Yidden, don't pour wine into the goyim's kelim, because it's going to become yain nesach before the guy is koinit, and then you won't be able to accept it. So we neutralize that shaila. So we're back to the same shaila. A maimer holds that Mashiach is koinit for a guy, Rabasho is not koinit for a guy. We thought we would have a raya that Mashiach is not koina from Rav, but we don't have a raya because Rav's concern was in a very specific case. So now we're going to bring rayas to the shaila of Mashiach koina or not, and we're going to bring rayas that Mashiach is koina. Meisvei. This is a case that we learned well already. Halakech rutois min ha'ovid yikachal. A yid buys scrap metal, scrap silver pieces from a goy, and when he opens up the box that he bought, umotza ben avodas kechal. He found getchkes inside. Now, if he takes possession of it, then he can't trade it in anymore. But if he didn't take possession of it, he can reject the sale, right? So, im ad shaloi nasan mois mashach. If he made a meshicha, but he didn't pay it, yachzir. So this seems to be a black and white raya that meshicha is not koina, because it's all told in the mois. So that's going to be a right to Rav Ashi against a meimar. Im isha nasan mois mashach, then yoylech yam melech. So this seems to say very clearly that the kinyan is kesef and there's no kinyan meshicha. Zok Gemara, Yisol Gedaitach Meshicha B'Av T'Chavim Koina. Am I Yachzer? How can it be Chayzer? Amar Abaye, you know why? It's not Midai Raisa. It's really he wasn't Koina. Even if normally Meshicha is Koina, in this case it won't be Koina. You know why? There's a new concept. It's called Mekach Tois. Ki Mekach Tois. Every Mekach Tois, even though I made a full blown kinyan, we nullified. Even a kedushin can be a Mekach Tois, right? So what's Kate Mechon? How do you ever arrive? I mean, the Mashiach is not koina. Havana Mashiach is koina, but it's a mekatos, and that's why you can give it back. Omer Rava, I don't understand. Reisha mekachtos, but seifa lav mekachtos. So in the seifa as well, why do you say you can't be chayzer? It's a mekachtos, just because you paid money. Zok to Gemara, al Omer Rava, Reisha v'seifa mekachtos. They're both mekachtos, and my ikar adin signed the Reisha, signed the seifa. He should be able to return the getchke. But in the Reisha, since he hadn't paid yet, so when he's giving the getchka back to the guy is not refunding his money because he never paid the guy. So therefore, loy mischazi kavoidus kechavim biyad Yisrael. It doesn't look like a yid is selling a getchka to a goy. But Seva the Yav Zuzi, and now when he gives the getchka to the goy is going to pay him because he's going to refund the money. Mischazi kavoidus kechavim biyad Yisrael. The whole problem here is their abundance. It's marasayin. It looks like the yid is selling a getchka to a goy. That's what it's also. So therefore, you don't have a raya here. If Mashiach is kind of, Mashiach is not kind of, doesn't make a difference. The reason why it was mutter was because it was a mekach tos, and the reason why it's usher is because there's a gzeira. It looks like a yid is selling to a guy. So we'll try another raya. Another raya that Mashiach is kind. Tashma. Our Mishnah. Now we know why the sugya is over here because it's already brought out from our Mishnah. If they made up the price before they made the Mashiach, mother means to measure, but I'm going to just use the word Mashiach to say mother because that's what mother does, right? So the halach is dam of mutarin. The money is mutar. Why? Because the guy was kind of a Mashiach before he had a chance to ask for the wine. So right over here you have a raya. The Mashiach is kind of right. Vi amrit Mashiach b'avdicham ena kind of amai dam of mutarin. So the guy made Mashiach, but the Mashiach is not kind until he's paid. And since the yid wasn't paid, the wine should be also. Good kasha? If Yod Mashiach is not kind until the guy pays the yid, it will be the yid's wine. So therefore, how could the yid accept money for this wine? It's his wine that became Yain Nesach. Because if Mashiach, if you hold Mashiach is kind, so then it was the guy's wine that became Yain Nesach. But if you hold the Mashiach is not kind, then it's the yid's wine that became Yain Nesach. So how can he accept money for it? So the actim lay dinner. There was a kinyan kesef here because before the guy made the Mashiach, they don't know how much the wine costs. So the guy says, "Here's $100. It'll for sure cover the cost of the wine, and once we figure out the price, you'll just refund me the excess." So therefore, when he made the Mashiach, the kinyan kesef would be chal right there. So therefore, you don't have a right that Mashiach is kind. Frankly, if that's the case, Modad actually posak damov. It's usher. Why? He paid already. He paid and he made a Mashiach. V'the kadam le dinner. Amai damav asurin. He paid. There was a Mashiach. Boom. So the kingdom should be chal. So why would it be usher? Rav says, why are you asking a kash on me? The way you learn Mashiach that makes more sense. What do you mean? Amai ratio damav butarin. Why is the damav butarin ratio? Because he made a Mashiach. Well, the Seva damav asurin and the Seva also made a Mashiach. So how do you understand the difference between the ratio? You're asking me, how do I understand the difference between the ratio and the sefer? I'll turn it right back at you. How do you understand the difference between the ratio and the sefer? Right? Elo, how are you going to explain the difference? Pasak, if they made up the price in advance of all the transactions, some chadaite. So then when I made my Mashiach and you had your kinyan kesef, you're ling Mashiach. So when I made the Mashiach was kinder because I know what I'm paying for it, so I'm accepting the deal and I'm making the Mashiach to be kinder. But like Pasak, if I didn't make up with you the price, even if I made a Mashiach, the kinyan won't be kinder because I'm not interested in the kinyan if I don't even know what it's going to cost me yet. Right? Loy Pasak, loy some chadaite. So you know what? Lidadi, who holds kinyan kesef, is going to have the same thing. Lidami. Avagav the kadam lediner. I'm learning it's where he prepaid. So pasak some chadaite. If we made up the price like in the ratio, then some chadaite. The kinyan kesef happened the moment you took the wine. But loy pasak in the sefer, loy some chadaite. Even though you paid in advance, but it doesn't make a difference. If you don't know how much you're paying, you're not machkim to the deal. So therefore, Lagabi, the sefer, the ratio, the Mishnah, you and I are on the same ground. The whole difference is you learn this work with Mashiach, and I learned that it's happening with kesef.
If you gave money before, it wouldn't be then? If you don't
No,
know the price,
because if you don't know the price, I don't really want the kinyan. Yeah,
but I gave you money.
right. But that doesn't mean you have it to be kind. I wouldn't have it to be kind. This is like the way it works. If you daven,
It's a deposit.
yeah, it's not a deposit because you're overpaid. Otherwise, it would make any question. If you go to a Chassidish Rebbe, like you go to Tush for Yom Kippur, right? If I buy an aliyah, meaning I pay for it before I get it, right? So then I know what I'm paying for. But if they give you an aliyah on their own, that's going to be way, way too expensive. So therefore, until you make up the price, don't take the goods. Because if you take the goods before you make up the price, it's not going to be good. Zog to Gemara weiter. So let's have another right. A guy who steals, even if it's less than a shavar pruda, a guy gets killed. And he doesn't have a din of a heshiv. And Rashi explains, a ben noyach the reason why if he steals even less than the Shavar Pruta, normally a Yid who steals less than the Shavar Pruta is nothing because we say it's Machal by Yid Pachas Shavar Pruta, there's no Akbad. But by a guy there is Akbad. So when a guy steals even the Pachas Shavar Pruta, it's called Gzela. The problem is, and he'll get killed for it because we know that you don't need to have Edom and Asra. If a guy is over one of the Shavar Mitzvah, he gets killed. We learned that better not to pass on him, but he gets killed, but he gets killed without Edom and Asra. So therefore he's chayvud, but l'nitin lishavin he doesn't have a mitzvah of heshav as a geilah, and we'll soon see why. If the old Mashiach is not koina, am I there? Why would the guy get killed? Yes, he took an object, but he didn't transfer it out of the Yid's Rishos. It always belongs to the Yid. Wherever it is, it belongs to the Yid. So why he technically cannot violate gzela? He can physically take an object, but he technically cannot steal. So how can he be chayvud? Zok Gemara mishum detzarli Yisrael. The chiv isn't because he transferred possessions out of the Jew's property. He didn't, but he caused tsar to a Yid by stealing from him. That's why he's chayiv misa. Break Gemara umayna little nishaven. What does it mean that he can't pay back? What do you mean he doesn't have to pay back? He can pay back, as Rashi says. The kivin of the kanya the Yisraeli. What do you mean he doesn't have to pay back? He can't. He never took it. He never took it. He's not even in the paras of Yishavin. You know why? Because he wasn't koined. Okay? Zok to Gemara, Neragalel, he gets, Ihachi, if you're going to say that Mashiach is not koined, and it's only, the only reason why the guy is chai for stealing from the Yid is because he calls Sar to the Yid, well, the Sefer says, what if now another guy came and stole it from him? So now it's a guy stealing from a guy. Neragala, the second guy would get killed because he stole from the first guy. I understand why the first guy is Chayv Misa because he's Mitzara Yid. But the second guy who stole it, say he wasn't Mitzara Yid, and say he wasn't Koina. So there's technically no Geneva, and he wasn't Mitzara Yid. So why is the second guy Chayv? Ella Seifa my Ovid. What did the guy do? What did the second guy do? Ella Shmamina Mishicha Ba'avid Gechavim Koina Shmamina. You have a raya from here that Mashiach is koina by a guy. Otherwise, why would the second guy get killed? So you have a raya like a meimar against Rav Ashi. The problem is one massive problem. The problem is we learned Tosfos on Amud Aleph already. That Tosfos says that the whole discussion of Mashiach is koina is only in a sale where there's kesef. But if someone found something, or he was given a gift where there's no exchange of money, everybody else Mashiach is kohen. So here by a ganav, but he's grabbing it, he's not paying. So everybody else Mashiach is kohen. So what's the raya from here? We're looking for a raya to mekach member.
Closer to a gift.
Right, there's no payment. So Zok Tosfos, let's look at this. There's only one Tosfos here, but in the center of the Tosfos the timer Lamai depreciable il the kamer the Mashiach koina bevet kachavim nuchula almo hecha the lekazuzi kigoyim b'mitziv matana my parach and my sirai migezel umekachamem car. There's no exchange of money. V'yeshloimar the sphere lay the einay koina bevet kachavim b'mekach. Then af begezel nami loy tikna. It shouldn't be a binding kinyan for gezel either, because gezel is more comparable to mekachamem car than the mitzia. Why? The exact wording that you use, that it's more similar to Mitzia, Tosfos says it's not. The Laidami Lamitzio Matana, the Behetera Asli Avol Gezel, the Bisur Asli Eloi Mahana Meshicha Bemekach, then Loi Mahana Asli. Exactly what the Svar is, I don't know. But Tosfos is saying you cannot compare it to Matana Mitzia because it's not Behetera Asli Yodei, it's Bisur Asli Yodei, and therefore it would be more linked to Memkar. I guess I'd have to think about that a little bit to get an understanding of what it means, but at least we know what the Gemara is saying. So we were going to finish Daf 71. 71 is a very